Hello and welcome. With only 6 software professionals, he launched a small company in 1981 that changed the face of the IT sector in India. He's now one of the most respected names in technology and recognized as a leading global businessman with a passion for doing good. This week on One, meet the founder of Infosys and renowned philanthropist, Narayana Murthy. The term IT wasn't in everyday vocabulary when Narayana Murthy was born in Karnataka just before the partition of India. By the time the young Murthy graduated in electrical engineering, work in computer programming was on the rise, and he took to it naturally. He met his wife and close partner Sudha in Pune when he took a job there. Also an engineer, she was instrumental in shaping his life and encouraging him to take the plunge as an entrepreneur. With a team of only half a dozen, Murthy set up Infosys in 1981. And his loyalty to his staff was enshrined in his quote, "Our assets walk out of the door each evening. We have to make sure that they come back the next morning." His career won him international awards and accolades, including Fortune's Asia's Businessman of the Year and one of the most influential global executives. Creating a massive fortune has, if anything, pushed Murthy even harder into philanthropy, particularly in India, where he recognizes the huge disparity between the rich and poor. Leading an unpretentious and materially simple lifestyle, Narayana Murthy now focuses his energy on developing opportunities for the needy and encouraging the education of young Indians in the IT sector. Well, it's great to be talking with you. A real pleasure to have a chance.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Riz, to meet you.
Well, sir, you know, you're described as one of those who shapes the future of technology, someone who's really been pioneering. Do you still feel that's a fair description?
I would first say it's a very generous and kind description. People have been very, very kind to me. But certainly I have played my own little part in advancing technology, in making sure that technology is useful to the society, is useful to nations. That's what I would say.
We'll get on to where it's taken you, but the idea of Infosys, I mean, you are described by many people as the Bill Gates of India. I'd like to think Bill Gates is the Narayana Murthy of the West, perhaps, but how did you get that idea to set up Infosys?
Well, you know, in 1981, when we started Infosys, there were several revolutions that were going on, several changes in paradigm that were going on. First of all, software got unbundled. Second, there was the availability of industrial strength transaction processing engines on super mini computers, which meant that cheaper software, cheaper hardware. Third, PCs were becoming popular. Fourth, we realized that India had the potential to leverage its technical talent for developing customized software applications for the world. I think when all these paradigms came together, that's how we thought that's the time to start Infosys. And, you know, God has been very kind to us.
India, though, is a place that's opened up more recently. 1981 wasn't the easiest environment in which to do business in India. So how were you able to take those steps to grow Infosys to the scale it grew to?
Well, you know, the progress of Infosys in its revenues, profits, geographies, all of that has come primarily from 1991 when we had the economic reforms. However, between 1981 and 1991, our growth was stunted. In fact, to give you some data points, between 81 and 91, we grew by a factor of 10 from a very small base. But between 92 and 2007, we grew by something like 1,500 times in revenues. I mean, this year, you know, we should be at least $4 billion in revenue and $1 billion in net income. So it's not been bad.
You have a philosophy of obviously putting back into the community. And again, I'll touch more on your philanthropy, as there's so much on that. But how do you think Infosys as a company has changed India or affected India? You yourself are credited with creating more millionaires in India than any other company.
A lot of times people ask me, what is the contribution of Infosys to India? There are many. First, we are the first company to realize the importance of global benchmarking. We said we will compare ourselves with the best in the field and learn from them adapt, and in some ways improve. That was the first one. Second, we realized the importance of corporate governance pretty early. And we said, we'll make sure that we'll follow the finest principles for corporate governance and attract investors from all over the world. As you know, we are the first Indian company to be listed on NASDAQ. Third, we created country's largest experiment in democratization of wealth. I would say one of the world's largest, because we have created probably about $5,000 millionaires and about 25,000 rupee millionaires. And some of them lot more than $1 million.
This is where I ask for a job, by the way.
You've always been very kind to me. Fourth, and most importantly, we raised the aspirations of hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs in the country, and they would say, look, if these 7 jokers can do it, we too can do it. I think that is the most important contribution of Infosys to India.
Now, I've had the honor of meeting you a number of times, and God bless you, you are a humble man. I know that personally, but how do you think going from that starting phase, and we'll touch on the difficulties you faced initially, but how do you think that incredible wealth you've achieved has changed you as a person?
Well, you know, when you talk about being humble, I am reminded of what Winston Churchill said about Attlee. Somebody told Winston that Attlee was a very humble man. And he said, he has a lot to be humble about.
But you've achieved a lot, so you personally?
Having said that, I believe that people like us who are making capitalism more and more acceptable in a country like India, we have to conduct ourselves in a manner that raises the confidence of the majority of the people. In other words, even though we have money, we have to lead a simple life. We had to lead a life that anybody can say, I too can become successful. On the other hand, if I led a life where I was jetting around in my private aircraft and then I had a huge house with zillions of security people, people would say, no, I can't become a good entrepreneur. This is only for people who have lots of money. So that's one of the reasons.
Tell me about your early life. You went through a tough time. I mean, tell me about those early days as a child in Mysore.
You know, I was the 5th child of 8 children. You know, we were 3 boys and 5 girls to my father. My father was, for most part, a teacher, a strict disciplinarian. He believed that everybody should, acquire a reasonable expertise in physics, mathematics, and English. He would make us sit down on the floor every Sunday and read, Charles Dickens and Shakespeare and whatnot, and ask us questions. And he would give us lots of puzzles. It was a simple family. We were fairly comfortable in terms of basic necessities. But there was strict discipline. There were good values to be followed. Mother was very compassionate. Oh, it was a wonderful time. Frankly, I personally feel that you do not need too much money to be happy. We were extremely happy.
Now, in terms of discipline, you say your father, did that rub off on you? Do you find you carry a lot of those traits?
Oh, yes, very much, very much. Fortunately, my wife also believes in those values, and she has in fact brought up our children even better than I am. Both of them have done pretty well in their studies. They have a very, very, very humble way of conducting themselves. So,
how did your mother influence you?
Well, mother always taught us compassion. Mother taught us the ability to give, the ability to sacrifice. For example, my father would bring some friends in the night. We were a family of already 8 children, my grandmother. And
at 18, I think, in the house, was it? A large number?
Something very large. Yeah. So he would bring some friends unannounced. And she would serve them with happiness. And sometimes she would sleep hungry because it's so difficult to cook at that point of time. But so she was always smiling. We would say, why are you smiling even though you have not eaten? She say, look, I had the opportunity to serve some guests.
In terms of those early days, what was it that occupied your time? What sort of interest did you develop in those early years?
Well, at that point of time, we did not even have a radio at home. We were a lower middle class background. So we'd go and play cricket every day. That was very easy. We would go to the park and listen to music, which was played on the public address system. We'd go and visit friends. Oh yeah, it was a wonderful time. We would be playing in front of the house all the time, play cricket.
You had a fantastic love story with your wife, Sudha. Her father wouldn't accept you for, I think, 3 years. You kept saying you wanted to marry her, and you wouldn't, because here you were a sort of wannabe politician / communist / entrepreneur. How did that relationship grow? How did you win her family over?
Well, I met Sudha in '74 when I came back from Paris, and we got along pretty well. She was, of course, a much smarter engineer than I am. Much more articulate than I am, much more vivacious, much happier. She can get along with everybody. She can go into any group and make herself comfortable. So when we wanted to get married, she arranged a meeting with her father, and he asked me, "What do you want to do, young man?" I stupidly said, "I want to enter politics." And then he said, "That's fine, what is your philosophy?" I said, "I believe in leftism." And he said, "Have you got enough money for your livelihood, for a comfortable life?" I said, "No."
You're honest.
He was a little bit surprised. But I must say that both of them, my parents-in-law and my sisters-in-law, my brother-in-law, they were all very, very kind. They blessed the marriage. I mean, even today, if my daughter were to come to me and say that she's going to get married to somebody who is nothing and who has some crazy ideas, I too would be as much concerned as Sudha's father was concerned. So it's normal. But he was very supportive. In fact, I got along extremely well with him. I learned so much from him.
Narayana ji, don't go away. We're going to have a short break here, but we're back with more one-on-one with Narayana Murthy in just a moment.